I wake up some nights still feeling the weight of that moment. The one where I looked at him across my living room and said the two words that ended everything I'd built in 6 decades of trying to do the right thing. Stay here. That's all it took. 2 words. And my entire world, the one I'd spent 60 years carefully constructing, brick by responsible brick, collapsed into dust. My name is Margaret, and I need you to understand something before I go any further. I'm not the kind of woman this happens to. Or at least I wasn't. I was the PTA president, the Sunday school volunteer, the woman who brought casseroles to every funeral and showed up early to every community meeting in our little corner of Oakmont, just outside Portland. My daughter Claire always joked that I was the neighborhood's unofficial mayor, the person everyone called when they needed advice or a listening ear. I wore cardigans. I drank chamomile tea. I had a garden with roses that won awards at the county fair. But on a Tuesday afternoon in September, when my daughter's husband stood in my doorway, with rain dripping from his jacket and desperation in his eyes, asking if he could come in and talk, I let him. And that single decision, that moment of saying yes when I should have said no, started a chain reaction I still don't fully understand. Let me back up, because you need to know how normal everything was before it all fell apart. My husband Robert died 4 years ago. Heart attack. Quick and clean, the doctor said, as if that somehow made it better. We'd been married 38 years. Good years, mostly. The kind where you forget to appreciate what you have until it's gone. After he passed, I did what I was supposed to do. I grieved appropriately, I kept busy. I threw myself into being the best grandmother I could be to Claire's 2 boys, Jackson and Michael, 8 and 6 years old. The lights of my life. Claire married Todd when she was 26. He was perfect on paper, MBA from a good school, job in finance, came from a solid family in Seattle. Handsome in that clean-cut, all-American way. At their wedding, I remember thinking my daughter had won the lottery. Everyone did. But weddings show you the highlight reel, not the director's cut. Nobody talks about what happens in year 7 when the shine wears off and you're left with who someone actually is. I started noticing things about 6 months before that Tuesday. Little things at first. The way Claire's smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. How she'd brush off my questions about how things were going at home with vague answers. Fine, Mom. Everything's fine. But a mother knows. A mother always knows when her child is drowning, even when they're treading water with a smile on their face. Todd started coming by my house more often. Always with an excuse, dropping off the boys, picking something up, fixing a leaky faucet I hadn't even mentioned, and I was grateful for the help. That's what I told myself. A widow living alone appreciates having a man around to handle the heavy things. That's what made it so easy to miss what was really happening. The first time I felt something shift was in July. He'd come over to help me move some boxes from the garage, and we ended up sitting on my back porch drinking iced tea, talking about nothing and everything. He told me about his father, who'd been cold and distant his whole childhood. I told him about Robert, about the little things I missed, the way he'd hum while he shaved in the morning, how he'd always check the locks twice before bed. And when Todd looked at me, really looked at me, I felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years. Seen. I know how that sounds. I'm 60 years old. I should know better. But loneliness does strange things to your judgment, makes you rationalize things you'd condemn in anyone else. If you're watching this and thinking you'd never be stupid enough to make the choices I made, hit that subscribe button. Because 3 months ago, I thought the exact same thing. August brought more visits, more conversations, more of those looks that lasted just a second too long. He started texting me, innocent things at first. Thanks for watching The Boys today. Claire mentioned you're dealing with that insurance issue, happy to help if you need it. Simple, neighborly, appropriate. Except texts at 10 at night aren't really about insurance, are they? I should have shut it down. I should have seen exactly what was happening and slammed that door closed. But here's what nobody tells you about being 60 and alone. You start to feel invisible. The world stops seeing you as a woman and starts seeing you as someone's mother, someone's grandmother, a nice lady who exists to serve others and then quietly disappear. And when someone looks at you like you're still worth noticing, still worth wanting, it lights up parts of yourself you thought were dead. The Tuesday it all changed, Claire had called me that morning, crying. He's leaving, Mom. Todd's leaving me. She could barely get the words out between sobs. He said he's not happy. Hasn't been happy for years, and he needs space to figure things out. What am I supposed to tell the boys? I drove straight to her house in Beaverton, spent 3 hours holding my daughter while she fell apart, watching her marriage dissolve in real time. She asked me the questions grieving women always ask. What did I do wrong? Could I have fixed this? How did I miss the signs? And I held her and made the appropriate, comforting sounds, all while something dark and guilty twisted in my stomach. Because part of me, God help me, part of me already knew Todd was going to show up at my door that night. He arrived at 7:30. I was in my kitchen trying to process what I'd witnessed at Claire's when I heard the knock, and I knew. Before I even opened the door, I knew exactly why he was there and what I should do about it. I opened it anyway. Margaret, He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, eyes red, shirt untucked. I'm sorry for just showing up. I didn't know where else to go. The smart thing, the right thing, the only thing a decent mother would have done in that moment was to close the door in his face, or to invite him in and tell him to go back to his wife, to fight for his family, to be the man my daughter needed him to be. I did neither of those things. Come in, I said. You're soaking wet. Those were the words. Come in. That's where the line was, and I stepped right over it with my eyes wide open. He sat on my couch, the same couch where I'd rocked my grandson to sleep dozens of times, and started talking about how he'd felt trapped for years, how he and Claire had grown into strangers, how he'd wake up next to her and feel completely alone. And with every word, I felt myself nodding, understanding, validating feelings I had no business validating. I need to tell you something, he said, and my heart started hammering in my chest because I knew what was coming, and I didn't stop him. These past few months talking to you, being around you, Margaret, you make me feel like myself again, like I'm not just going through the motions of a life I didn't choose. I should have stood up right then. Should have told him he was confused, grieving his marriage, projecting onto the wrong person. Should have reminded him that I was his mother-in-law, his wife's mother, that what he was suggesting was unthinkable. Instead, I whispered, I know. And when he moved closer, when his hand found mine on the couch cushion between us, I didn't pull away. Nothing happened that night beyond that touch. Beyond sitting too close and talking in whispers like we were sharing secrets the universe wasn't meant to hear. But it was enough. That single moment of connection was enough to start the avalanche. He left around midnight, and I sat in my dark living room until dawn, staring at the family photos on my mantle, Claire's wedding, the boys' school pictures, Robert's funeral program I'd framed like a shrine. And I thought about what I'd just done, what I'd allowed, what I'd wanted. Stay with me, because what happened next made that night look innocent. The next morning, Claire called again. He won't answer my calls, Mom. I don't know where he stayed last night. I'm scared he's serious about leaving. I made all the right sounds, said all the right things, and volunteered to watch Jackson and Michael for a few days while she figured things out. The perfect, supportive mother, the reliable grandmother, the woman who'd never in a million years be the reason her daughter's marriage was falling apart. Todd texted me 3 hours later. I can't stop thinking about last night. I stared at those words for 10 minutes. I could see the little dots that showed he was typing something else, deleting it, typing again. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Delete the message, block the number, call Claire, confess everything before it went any further. I typed back, me either. For the next 2 weeks, we existed in this strange limbo. He moved into a hotel in downtown Portland. Claire was devastated but trying to hold it together for the boys. And Todd and I were texting constantly, long conversations about life and regrets and roads not taken. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, nothing I couldn't have explained away if someone had read them, but the subtext was there in every word. We both knew what we were dancing around. He came by to pick up the boys one Saturday afternoon. Claire had reluctantly agreed to let them spend the day with him, and I'd offered to facilitate the handoff so she wouldn't have to see him. When the boys ran out to his car, we had maybe 60 seconds alone in my driveway. I miss you, he said quietly. And the way he said it, like I was something precious he'd lost, made my chest ache. "This is wrong," I whispered back, glancing toward the car where Jackson was already buckling his seatbelt. "You know this is wrong." "I know," he said, "but it's the first thing that's felt right in years." And God help me, I understood exactly what he meant. If you're still watching this, trying to figure out how this could possibly get worse, make sure you're subscribed. Because I haven't even gotten to the part where everything truly fell apart. The first time we met alone, intentionally, knowingly crossing the line we'd been skirting for weeks, was on a Wednesday afternoon in October. Claire thought Todd was meeting with a lawyer. Todd told his hotel he'd be out of town for work, and I told myself I was just meeting him for coffee to talk, to maybe convince him to give his marriage another chance. We met at a small cafe in Lake Oswego, far enough from Oakmont that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I wore a blue dress I'd bought the week before, something younger than my usual style, and I'd spent an hour on my makeup. For coffee, to talk sense into my son-in-law. The lies we tell ourselves are always the most dangerous ones. We didn't just talk. We sat in a corner booth for 3 hours, and he held my hand on the table where anyone could see, and we talked about everything except the topic that mattered: what the hell we thought we were doing. He told me I was beautiful, that talking to me made him remember what it felt like to be excited about life, that for the first time in years, he felt like someone actually understood him, and I soaked it up like a woman who'd been dying of thirst in a desert. Because at 60, after 40 years of being a wife and a mother and putting everyone else's needs first, someone was finally putting me first. Someone was choosing me. "I want to kiss you," he said as we sat in my car afterward, parked in the back of the lot. "We can't," I said, but I didn't move away when he leaned closer. "I know," he said. And then his lips were on mine, and I was kissing my daughter's husband in a parking lot like a teenager, and it was the most alive I'd felt since Robert died. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Carefully, secretly, always in places where we wouldn't be seen. His hotel room, my house when I knew Claire wouldn't stop by, a hiking trail an hour outside the city. And every time I'd tell myself it was the last time, that I'd end it, that I'd confess to Claire and beg for forgiveness. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I felt chosen, desired, important in a way that had nothing to do with being useful to someone else. The guilt ate at me constantly. I'd have dinner with Claire, watch her cry over her failed marriage, hold my grandsons and read them bedtime stories, and the whole time I'd be thinking about Todd's hands on my skin, his whispered promises, the way he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I was living a double life, and I was terrifyingly good at it. November brought a new complication. Claire started talking about marriage counseling. "He agreed to go, Mom. Maybe there's hope. Maybe we can fix this." And I sat across from her in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Todd had kissed me against the counter 2 days earlier, and I said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so glad." That night, I called Todd in a panic. "You can't go through with counseling. She thinks you're trying to save the marriage." "I know," he said, sounding tired. "But what am I supposed to do? I can't exactly tell her the truth." "Which is what, exactly?" I asked, suddenly angry at him, at myself, at the entire impossible situation. "That you're sleeping with her mother? That we've been lying to her for months?" "That I'm in love with you," he said quietly, and my anger evaporated into something far more dangerous. Nobody was supposed to say that. Love wasn't part of this equation. Love made it real, made it something that couldn't be dismissed as a mistake or a moment of weakness. "Don't," I whispered. "It's true," he said. "And I think you feel the same way." I hung up without answering, but we both knew he was right. The counseling sessions lasted 3 weeks before Todd called them off. "I can't do it," he told Claire. "I can't pretend there's something to save when I know there isn't." She called me sobbing that night, and I held the phone and let her cry and said all the right supportive mother things while Todd's car sat in my driveway, hidden around back, while he waited in my bedroom for me to finish the call. That's who I'd become. The kind of woman who comforts her heartbroken daughter while the man who broke her heart waits in the next room. If you're wondering how I looked at myself in the mirror every morning, I'm still wondering the same thing. But keep watching, because the worst was yet to come. December arrived with the holidays looming, and suddenly the logistics of our secret became exponentially more complicated. Claire wanted Todd at Christmas for the boys' sake. Todd wanted to spend it with me. I was expected to host the family gathering I'd held every year since Robert and I bought the house in 1992. "We have to tell her," I said to Todd one night in early December. We were at his hotel, and I was lying in bed trying to figure out how we'd gotten here, how I'd let it get this far. "This can't go on." "Tell her what?" he asked. "That I'm leaving her for her mother? That you and I have been together for months? Margaret, it'll destroy her." "She's already destroyed," I snapped. "At least if she knew the truth, she could hate us properly instead of thinking it's somehow her fault." "One more month," he said, pulling me close. "Let's get through the holidays. Let the boys have one more normal Christmas, and then we'll figure it out. Together." I agreed because I was a coward. Because every day I didn't tell the truth was another day I got to keep both of them, my daughter's love and Todd's arms around me at night. Christmas Eve, I hosted dinner like always. Claire and the boys. Todd, playing the separated but civil father. My sister and her husband, who'd driven down from Seattle. And me, passing appetizers and pouring wine and pretending my entire life wasn't built on a foundation of lies that was about to crumble. Todd and I barely spoke to each other all night, terrified that a single look would give us away. But at one point, I was in the kitchen, and he came in to refill his drink, and our hands brushed as he reached past me for the bottle. Just that tiny touch, lasting maybe half a second, and I felt it everywhere. "Later," he mouthed silently, and I nodded. He left with the boys around 9, taking them to his hotel for the night as planned. Claire stayed longer, helping me clean up, talking about how hard the holidays were, how she wished things were different. "I miss having a complete family," she said, washing dishes at my sink. "I look at Jackson and Michael and I wonder what kind of example we're setting. That marriage doesn't matter. That commitment is optional." I stood there with a dish towel in my hands, drying the same plate over and over, unable to look at her. "Sometimes things don't work out," I said quietly. "It doesn't mean anyone failed. Sometimes people just change." "Did you and Dad ever go through rough patches?" she asked. "Of course," I said, finally putting down the plate. "Every marriage has them. But you worked through them." "We did," I agreed, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. Robert and I had been comfortable, compatible, content. But had we been in love, really in love, especially toward the end? Or had we just been two people who'd been together so long that staying seemed easier than leaving? Claire left around 11, hugging me tight at the door. "Thanks for tonight, Mom, for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." I stood in my doorway and watched her drive away, and I felt sick. Todd texted 30 minutes later. "Can I come over?" I should have said no. It was Christmas Eve. My daughter had just left. The boundaries we'd carefully maintained in public, the pretense that we were nothing to each other, should have held for at least one more night. I texted back, "Yes." He arrived at midnight, and we didn't talk about Claire or the boys or the impossible situation we'd created. We just held each other in the dark, and I tried not to think about how this was the definition of betrayal, choosing him over her, Christmas Eve or not, again and again and again. "I want to tell her after New Year's," he said into the silence. "I want us to be able to actually be together, not hiding all the time." "She'll never forgive me," I whispered. "I know," he said. "But I also know I can't keep living like this." "Can you?" I couldn't. We both knew I couldn't. But knowing you need to do something and actually doing it are two very different things. What I didn't know then, as we lay there making plans to blow up my daughter's world, was that we were already too late. Someone had already seen us, and they were about to make sure everyone else did too. The first crack appeared on December 27th. Claire called me, her voice strange, tight. "Mom, can you come over? Now?" "What's wrong?" I asked, already grabbing my keys. "Just Please come over. I drove to her house with my heart hammering, trying to figure out what could have happened. An accident with the boys? Bad news from a doctor? Some new development in the divorce proceedings? When I got there, she was standing in her living room with her phone in her hand, and the look on her face made my blood run cold. Is it true? She asked without preamble. Is what true? I said, but my voice came out wrong, guilty before I even knew what I was guilty of. She held up her phone and I saw a photograph on the screen. Todd and me sitting in his car in my driveway, his hand on my face, leaning in to kiss me. The angle suggested it had been taken from across the street, through the window. Someone with a long lens or a good phone camera. The world tilted sideways. Claire, I started, but I had no idea what could possibly come after her name. What explanation could I offer? What lie could I tell that would be bigger than the truth staring us both in the face? My neighbor took this last week, she said, her voice eerily calm. She thought I should know that my mother and my husband were having an affair. The word affair hung in the air between us, ugly and undeniable. How long? She asked when I didn't respond. How long have you been sleeping with Todd? Claire, please. How long? She was screaming now, all that careful calm shattering. How long have you been doing this to me? While I was crying on your shoulder about my failing marriage, were you already sleeping with my husband? When you were watching my children, telling me everything would be okay, were you sneaking around with him behind my back? I wanted to lie. God, I wanted to lie so badly. To tell her it was one time, a mistake, a moment of weakness, but I couldn't. I'd been lying for months, and I couldn't do it anymore. Since September, I whispered. The sound she made wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite a sob. It was something more primal than that, the sound of someone's entire reality shattering. Get out, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Get out of my house. Claire, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. She threw her phone across the room, and it hit the wall with a crack. You're my mother! You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to be on my side. And instead, you... She couldn't even finish the sentence, couldn't put into words what I'd done to her. I'm sorry, I said, knowing how pathetically inadequate those words were. Claire, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, she said, and there were tears streaming down her face now. Sorry doesn't undo months of lies. Sorry doesn't change the fact that every time I came to you for comfort, for advice, for support, you were betraying me in the worst possible way. I never meant... Get out! She screamed again, and this time I listened. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. When I got there, Todd's car was in my driveway. He was sitting on my front steps, and the look on his face told me he already knew. She called me, he said as I approached. She knows everything. I know, I said, sitting down beside him on the steps. She showed me a picture. Someone took a picture of us. We sat there in silence for a long moment, the weight of what we'd done, what we'd destroyed, settling over us like a suffocating blanket. What do we do now? He asked. And that's the question I'm still trying to answer. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about forbidden love, about choosing desire over duty, about following your heart when your heart is leading you somewhere unforgivable. Sometimes you get exactly what you want, and it costs you everything that actually mattered. Claire isn't speaking to me. She's blocked my number, blocked me on every social media platform, and told me through her lawyer that I'm not allowed near Jackson and Michael, my own grandsons, the lights of my life, and I'm barred from seeing them because of what I've done. My sister knows. My neighbors know. The entire community that once looked up to me as this pillar of respectability and kindness now knows that I destroyed my daughter's marriage. There's no coming back from this. No apology that will fix it. No amount of time that will make anyone forget. And Todd, we're still together. Living in my house, trying to build something real out of the wreckage we created. Some days it feels like love, like maybe what we have was worth the cost. Other days, I look at him and see my daughter's face when she found out, and I want to scream. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if there even was a right choice once I opened that door on that Tuesday in September. Maybe the right choice was made 30 years ago when I married Robert, or 28 years ago when I had Claire, and every choice after that was just a long, slow slide toward this moment. What I do know is this. I'm 60 years old, and I finally chose myself. I chose what I wanted instead of what I was supposed to want, and maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe that makes me a terrible mother. Maybe that makes me unforgivable. But I'm not sorry I did it, and I'm not sure what that says about me. So now I'm asking you, if you were in my position, if you had the chance to feel alive again after years of just existing, if someone made you feel seen and wanted and chosen after decades of invisibility, would you do it? Even knowing what it would cost? Even knowing who it would hurt? Leave your answer in the comments, because I honestly don't know anymore if what I did was the worst mistake of my life or the bravest thing I've ever done. And if you stayed with me this long, through all of this mess, through every terrible choice I made, hit that subscribe button. Because this story, it's not over. Not even close. Claire might not be speaking to me now, but she's still my daughter. And Todd might be here with me, but he's still her husband. And somewhere in this wreckage, there has to be a way forward. I just haven't found it yet.